Hello, good afternoon. Are you all right? Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Zafar Iqbal, and welcome to a session of strategic marketing LO2. Today, we'll be looking at the be able to apply tools for analyzing the business environment in strategic marketing. So today's session, be looking at some kind of tools, how to apply the tools for analyzing the business environment in strategic marketing. Okay, we will be covering. Number one, we'll be looking at the smart strategic marketing objectives for an organization. We'll be looking at the external and competitive environment in which an organizational company performs its activities. And then we'll need to look at some conclusions about external stakeholders and internal environment of the business and in which a business organization performs itself. Okay, so let's look at the first one, which is to develop a strategic marketing objectives for an organization. Now we need to look at the marketing process in a whole. So first of all, what are the strategic marketing objectives? In order to find out what are the strategic marketing process and strategy, how do we fulfill them? How do we fulfill the marketing objectives? We need to know where we are now. i.e. we need to do our strategic assessment. We need to do our internal SWOT analysis, and this will determine our strategic assessment. Where are we now? Then we need to look at where we want to go, where we want to head. So where we want to be in X number of years time, for example, that will determine our vision and future business model. And how do we get there is the integrated high level plan, where we determine the strategic and strategies and objectives, and we develop the strategic options and implementation. And okay, so the process for strategic marketing is where we are now, where do we want to be in X number of years, for example, and how do we get there? And this will be determining the process of the marketing process and strategic marketing process. Okay, now look at the first of all, where are we now? We need to look at our objectives, smart objectives, smart goals. Excuse me. And this, now SMART, as you know, stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based objectives. Okay, it can be specific. What do we mean by specific? Means we need to know, what are our specific what are specific, for example, in terms of resources, in terms of outcomes, in terms of goals, in terms of resources, what do we have, and how much leverage do we have to achieve these successes? So you need to be able to make sure that we are not too vague. Okay, otherwise, if you are vague, then this is not specific. This is of course vague, and vague doesn't really help anybody. Okay, it's too vague and you can't really determine specific. So it's got to be concrete. In other words, it's got to be specific objectives, and they've got to be measurable in terms of, say, for example, in terms of percentage terms, or in terms of their actual, the measurement, the yardstick that we're going to determine. And this component answers how much or how many and how you will know what you have achieved so far. So you should have some clear definition of successful. This will, for example, in percentage terms, we want to attain our market share, or we want to increase our market share 5% in the next year, and so on. Or we want to determine our marketing profit, in the next year, of 5% or 10% and so on. Okay, so it's got to be measurable, and they got to be measurable in terms of what you can achieve, what you can attain. For example, no use having a market objective where you can't achieve it because you haven't got the resources, you don't have the capabilities. It's too big, it's too vague, and it's not relevant, for example. So the target that you set for yourself should be challenging but achievable. Okay, otherwise unrealistic challenges cannot be attainable and cannot be reasonable to achieve. Therefore, you must determine whether they are attainable or whether there are any barriers to your attainability. Okay, so you should really make sure that they are capable of you achieving. Otherwise, don't set too high objectives, and also at the same time, don't set too low objectives, because then you will be underperforming. Okay, so therefore they got to be realistic. Okay, they've got to be next thing is they've got to be realistic, they've got to be relevant, because otherwise it's not worthwhile having to try them on, and it doesn't really have any point creating these unrealistic targets for yourself, because if you don't achieve them, then there'll be what you call them consequences, and they're not really it's not good for the company. And they've got to be time bound. Of course, they should be attainable within a particular time, within a year, within a 6 months time, or within a realistic time frame to achieve your goals, to ensure that you don't get discouraged. And if you leave it too long, for example, over the next 5 years, we're going to achieve my 5% of market share on the next 5 years. It's too long. You might dwindle, you might forget about these, you might might achieve it at the end of 5 years, but then it'll be too long. And so therefore, they should be time bound, with realistic time bound, okay, and realistic targets. Okay, so we can determine our SMART objectives by claiming it to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, relevant, time bound, and so on. Okay, make sure that you are following this specific SMART objective, and you got to be re-evaluate them and readjust them afterwards, because if you achieve them, okay, you achieve them, and then what do we do? Then you need to revise them, you need to be you be able to evaluate them, readjust them, and then if you're underperforming or overperforming, then you can set targets accordingly. Okay, because next time you review them, next time you adjust them, next time you progress and evaluate yourself again. Okay, evaluating performance depends on for example, once you set your individual level targets, they are fed back into the team level, then the team levels feed back into the departmental level, the departmental level feeds their target into the functional level, then they go into the board level, and then the board level is reviewing all these targets. There is a line of sight. They're overseeing these targets. They're looking at these targets, and then you review them. You change them. You adjust them, and then on your capabilities, you move on to the next bit. Okay, and your next bit is you look at the strategic direction, which direction you are going to go for. So basically, there are different strategic directions that one can go. There are basic choices. For example, when companies are marketing, or when companies are strategically looking for their option, they can penetrate into existing market, or increasing diversifying into different market areas or products. Okay, so there are two options for them: penetration or diversification. Now, the diversification means you increase your range of products or markets into areas that are either related areas, i.e. the same type of products or same line of product areas, okay, without expanding too much into utilizing too much of your resources. You can bank on your existing resources. You can use your existing resources in order to diversify into related products. Okay, or you can diversify into completely new area of market, new products, new services, new area of market, and build new relationships rather than the existing relationships. Okay, because you are diversifying into a newer market, and that's quite risky, that's quite dangerous, that's quite requiring a lot of resources and requiring a lot of challenge. So you got to be aware which choice you got to make. Either you're going to go for existing markets or diversifying into related markets or unrelated markets. Okay, so you got to make a choice, or the company's got to make a choice, or the organization. So there are different strategic directions that organizations can go into. Okay, now strategic directions, another okay, so this can be looked at from this angle. In other words, ANSOS, you can look at this strategy from the eyes of ANSOS, which is ANSOS matrix, which is divided into 4 quadrants. The first one, you can have a market development, for example, market development, which is the existing excuse me, existing products into the new markets. That's called the market development, or existing products into the existing market, which is the penetration, or you can go into new products into the existing markets, or new products into the new markets. All right, so when we are talking about existing products into the existing market, we're talking about the market penetration. Okay, and this is quite easier, quite simple, because the company has resources and the company has can achieve very quickly and be successful or otherwise, but it's easier for them to go into market penetration. Okay, if you can't go into the existing markets and existing products, then you need to go into this particular direction, or you can go to this angle, which is complete new products into the new markets, which is complete diversification. Okay, and this is a bit risky, this is safer. Okay, within the middle, in the middle bit, is the product development or the market development. Now the product developments are new products. You are designing new products for existing markets. You need, design the new products, maybe by differentiation, maybe pricing, maybe offering them kind of discounts or something. You develop the newer products for existing markets, or you develop new markets for existing products, and therefore you can go in the middle bit. Okay, so you can use the ANSOS matrix in order to move into different directions. Okay, now marketing department can be seen as very important, because it can be seen from different angles, from different time of the from different perspective. In a company, it can be viewed as an equal function, which is here, for example, it can be seen as equal to marketing, can be seen as equal to production or personnel or finance, or it can be seen as a more important function, whereby it has a more important role because of its function is seen as more important function in terms of generating the marketability of the organization. Or it can be seen as a major function. You can split it as a function of the area, major function, or it can be looked at from the customer's angle as a controlling function, or the customer is, marketing can be looked at from the angle of customer as the controlling function, and the marketing is as an integrative function. So different roles, marketing can be seen from different angles, different roles in a different organization, or different, in a company. They can be viewed differently from different perspectives. It's very important. So because it's developed over the years, it has developed as a function. It has developed from the equal footing into, the fifth quadrant, which is E, and as a customer controlling the marketing function, and the marketing is an integrative function rather than an equal function. Okay, so it has, over the years, it has developed into different sort of function area. All right, so you need to view marketing as a different function these days. So looking at the 1.1, or we want to make sure here, going back to our application here, developing smart objectives, strategic marketing objectives for an organization. You can develop your smart objectives, strategic marketing objectives by looking at where you are now, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there by applying tools such as SMART goals tools, or ANSOF strategy, or strategic direction strategy, and or ANSOF strategy. Okay, and you can move from there. Okay, looking at the external and competitive environment in which an organization performs, we need to look at the marketing environment in a different perspective. This can be viewed from internal environment or from the external environment, which is the internal environment, which is the controllable environment, or which are the factors that can be controlled from ourselves, and the external environment, which is uncontrollable factors that are beyond our control. Now, the internal environment is known as the micro environment, and the external environment, which is the macro environment. Okay, so the macro environment we have no control over. Okay, so when we are looking at the marketing environment, we need to look at the marketing environment as a whole. Okay, it can be from the internal and the external. So let's look at the external environment. Okay, so the external environment is composed of, you may have heard, of course, the PESTEL analysis, or the PESTEL, PESTLE or PESTEL, however you want to call it, or it started with PEST initially, PEST, and your company is here, and all the other factors are outside this company. Okay, the uncontrollable factors. Now the P is political, and E is for economic or environmental, and C, okay, or S is for sociological and environmental factors, and the T is for the technological environmental factors, or technological environment, and environment, and the E is the environment, another legal environment. Okay, so these are the some factors that are external to the environment, and we need to use those PESTEL analysis in order to look at the external environment. As I said, PEST or PESTEL. PEST is a short, used to be initially started off with the PEST, and later on the environmental legal factors were considered important, and these factors have come to be known as the drivers for change. Okay, these are the drivers for change because you need to look at these drivers and how the companies, how the organization change or they manage change from these factors, and you need to look at them because they are very important, but beyond the control of the organization. Otherwise, if you don't take the external factors into account, then of course, then you are failing, then the organization is failing to keep itself updated or to change or mold itself according to the external situation, and then it will suffer drastically. Okay, and the organizations who do not change themselves from internal or external, but most likely external factors, they fail to perform, they fail to exist. Okay, so from these PESTEL analyses, we can look at the scenario analysis, and we can have a look at the impact on them. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the political factors. Political, these are the factors that organization need to take into account. For example, currency factors, or the exchange rate, for example, affects organization in the sense that when there is a raw materials, or when the foreign raw materials increase in prices, or in food prices, for example, then they can increase inflation or prices, finished goods, and okay, so they'll have a factor on the the cost of production and the cost of sales and the cost of product itself. It'll lead to inflation, and people, if they have less money, they'll spend less on the on the products and services, and therefore as an effect, then it will have a, if the expenditure is getting less in the economy, of course it's having an economic effect on other factors as well. Okay, if for example there's a decrease in prices, then of course people have more money for disposable income, they'll spend more and the economy will flourish. Okay, in the first instance, the economy, when the people don't spend money, then the economy will suffer. It will contractionary effect will happen. Otherwise, if you do not spend, then the spending power is, people save money and people spend less, then it will have a effect on the economy. Okay, another factor could be, for example, if the consumer confidence falls, if the consumer don't trust the economy, then of course there'll be an economic downturn, because the confidence level has gone down, the investment might turn down, people don't have a confidence in the economy, and this will have a downturn effect on the economy. So you can see from these, when the political situation, when the political turmoil happens in an economy, and people don't trust the political leadership, then the economy will suffer as a result. Investment will suffer, and everything else, of course, will suffer, because people are worried, people don't invest, people are trying to save for a rainy day, and so the confidence level affects. Okay, so this is one of the major effects on organizations, and they need to take these into account. Economic factors. Okay, look at economic factors. For example, there is a problem when, for example, if an economic investment, investments is coming into the market, then of course this will give a boost to the economy. This will the confidence will rise. On the other hand, if for example the political situation, due to the political situation, a political party pledges more or less on a certain amount of money to invest, of course it will have an effect on all sorts of economic growth rate and interest rate, and inflation and employment will suffer. Okay, so a slump in food, shopping, drugs, down the UK retail sale, also effect on the interest rate and employment rate. So economic is connected with the political situation. So it's very important that the economic, if the economic situation affects the marketing, of course, or a plan for the organizations or their growth rate and so on. For there is, for example, if the shares in a stock exchange plunge, then they'll be having an effect on the economy as well. So these factors are very important for planning for our future. Social factors like for example aging population, for example, or increasing or the consumer behavior and the buying patterns, or people's incomes fall, or the people's confidence falls through, the skills level of people come down, or the rising costs in medical, or the rising costs of for example caretaking, rising costs, and any other things. There's a lot of pressure on people, so all these of course will have an effect on the marketing, an effect on the objectives of the organization, or on our planning. And we've got to take these into account, as the organizations have to plan for these social factors. They should take these into account, because if they can't sell their products to aging population, then they need to revise their strategy, their objectives, their marketing behavior, and therefore they need to study these before they can do anything else. So therefore, social factors are very important, like population, like drop in the growth rate, like aging population, like skills, like buying patterns, like demand for particular goods, like demand for if the product rises, then what they're going to have effect on the other goods and so on. Okay, elasticity and not elasticity, all these will have effect on the organization. Next factor which is important to consider is the technological factors. Now the technological factors like the communication or ICT, information communication technology, if the organizations are not adopting to the technology, then they'll be, of course, suffer, then they'll be having effect on their industry, and it'll, but if they are changing rapidly, if they are developing new products, if they are implementing technology into their businesses, then this will speed up their product development, their progress, their, then they can move towards achieving their organizational goals. If they are doing some research and development, this will have implications for the, for the industry, for the organization, and it will have a good effect on them. Otherwise, if you don't keep up with the development of information technology, for the organization will suffer. So therefore, this is a very important factor to take into consideration. Lastly, environmental factors, like for example, they'll have an effect on your organization, on any organization. These refer to, these environmental factors refer to some kind of ecological factor, or the factors that are increasing in society, like the scarcity of raw materials, for example, or pollution, for example, or waste generation, or the disposable or recycling, or using the what you call them, recyclable materials, or for example, lead-free petrol, and causing less pollution on the roads. So therefore, these are environmental and social factors, very important. The key factors to consider are global warming, for example, the geographical location where you are, and how these factors are affecting your organization and the people as a whole. Climate change, disposable of natural resources and wastage, and how effectively are we recycling these products, and how we are utilizing the natural resources, because the natural resources are always limited in quantity and in number. So we must be able to consider these into account. Example of how this one factor is in, one organization is implementing, like Unilever, for example. They are taking this in very seriously, and a lot of other organizations like IKEA, for example, or Coca-Cola, for example, or Amazon, for example. They are considering, they are utilizing these factors, environmental factors, into their social corporate responsibility, CSR, and they are taking this very seriously, where they want to take the CSR far and beyond the their organization, and they're putting that into society, so that society can also benefit from this. So for example, this Unilever is determining, or they're using their natural resources, their financial resources, in order to use for the better of the consumers, for the betterment of creating a better value for organization, and environmental, taking the environmental into account, whereby they their purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. So they are having this as a purpose, and how they're going to get there is to grow our business while decoupling our environmental footprints from our growth, and increasing our possible social impacts delivered through the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. So they are using this as a vision, whereby they want to use the sustainable living commonplace and making that purpose, so that the sustainable living plan, they can use, they can use the environmental impact. They can use the environmental strategy. They can use the sustainable growth area. They can use the sustainable strategy. They can use, different products, whereby they are supported by, these strategic objectives or visions, to make sure that they are good for the environment, they are sustainable for the environment, and they're supported by the strategy like beauty and personal care, okay, or home care and food, they are recyclable products, and they're used for the best of the consumers, to take consumers' interest into account, to improve the health of their well-being, to improve, reduce environmental impact on the environment, and to make sure that their livelihood is enhanced by using these sustainable development strategies and sustainable goals. Okay, so you can see how far the Unilever is implementing its sustainable, policy into action. And a lot of other organizations are using this by using their CSR as a base for delivering goods and services for the benefit of the community. For example, they are, a lot of companies, or IKEA is one of the companies that's using, new ways of using electricity into their organizations by making sure that they are used when they need it, and they're putting dimmers on, or they're using better strategies for their training people into using these strategies for the benefit of their workforce, and giving them holidays or giving them some kind of training, and making sure that they are using sustainable energies for a longer term growth. Okay, and Coca-Cola is also implementing a lot of CSR. A lot of councils are implementing recycling, or what you call them, using cycles for reducing pollution onto the roads, by giving people grants, by giving employees grants and training, and making sure that they have cycles instead of taking cars to workplace. This contributes to the environment, okay, green environment. So they are trying to play their part, okay. And so training and exhibitions and giving equipment, or giving a cycle instead of using petrol or cars to go to work, is one means, or is a number of means to contributing to the environmental factors. Legal factors, we need to look at the organizations need to look at the legislation that the government is implementing, like recycling, for example, or sustainability, or employment law, the consumer law, for example, or antitrust law, anti-dumping law, health and safety laws, and so many other laws to meet in order to start production or expand operations. So we need to take them into consideration when we are doing our health and safety, for example, or safety at work acts. It's very important that the organization adhere to these laws, in order to achieve their objectives or marketing. And what you call external factors are affecting the organization into taking the law into consideration. If they don't abide by these laws, for example, minimum wage law, or employment law, or safety laws, or specific industrial laws, then of course, or recycling laws, and they'll be affected. The organization will be affected, and if they need to survive, they need to take these into consideration. So the external factors are very important factors that needs to be taken when you are designing your marketing strategy, when you're designing your objectives. Another thing you need to take into consideration is we can use 5 forces model into consideration. This model is known as the 5 forces, or Porter's 5 forces model, whereby the organizations can look at these factors when designing their marketing strategy, when they're designing their marketing, what you call them, marketing plan, and so on. So the 5 factors are, for example, number 1 is threat of new entrants. Second one is the bargaining power of buyers. Third one is the bargaining power of sellers or suppliers. The fourth one is the threat of substitutes. And the last factor that needs to be taken into consideration is intensity of competitive rivalry. So let's look at this when we are talking about the 5 forces model, and how they're going to impact us, how they're going to impact our organization. So understanding the 5 forces model. So for example, number 1, is the buying power, or what you call them, the competitive rivalry. Now, competitive rivalry means how many competitors are there in your marketplace, in your market area, in your in your market. Okay, who are they? How do they differ to your products? How do their quality differs to your product? How do they compare with yourselves in providing goods and services? Where are they based? For example, what customers, companies, what are they using? Okay. For example, what are the strengths of our competitors? Where you are likely to have a competition, where you're likely to have a healthy competition, and you are having to have a healthy profits, then you need to, because the more profitable a market area is, more competition is going to be, and more competitive the products are going to be. So therefore, you need to find out which area is this, and how you're going to design your marketing campaign accordingly. Okay. The second factor that needs to be taken into account is the supplier power, or power of your suppliers. How easy or difficult it's to get raw materials, and how easy or difficult is it to affect the increase or decrease in prices of your suppliers. Can you influence your supplier by lowering their prices? Are their product unique in the sense that they are charging high price? How expensive it is to switch from one place to another, or one supplier to another, and how easy it is to choose from one alternative materials to another. So therefore, you need to look at the you need to look at this supplier power. Are they very strong? Are they very weak? Are there a lot of suppliers? Are there a few suppliers? If there are a few suppliers, then that means they are in a stronger position, and they will not budge to your demands, for example, lowering the price of that particular material. Therefore, you have to be in a position to face that kind of face that. Otherwise, if there are a lot of suppliers, they have a less power, of course, and your ability to change, or your ability to charge, will be lower than the suppliers. So they will charge what they want. So therefore, you need to look at what their power is according to your your ability to pay, and so forth. So you must be able to determine their suppliers' power. Okay. The third factor, which is the buying power, or buyer power, is you need to know how many buyers are there, and how big are their orders. Are there a lot of buyers, or there are a small number of buyers, and what do they buy from you? Or do they buy in large quantities, or do they buy in smaller quantities? How much would it cost, for example, them to switch from your product or services and to those of a rival? Are your buyers in a stronger position than yourself to dictate the terms and reference terms and conditions of the price and materials? So therefore, you need to know, if there are only a few customers, then of course they have more power, they have more power to determine your demands, or to lower your demands, or they have more buying power, and therefore they'll be able to influence your decisions. Okay. So this is very important. Okay. The number of buyers determines the decisions that you're going to take. The more the buyer, the stronger your organization is. The less the number of buyers, then you have less power against those customers. Okay. And the last one, the number 4, is the number of substitutes that are available on the market. Now, if the number of the threat of substitutes is very important, in the sense that when buyers can easily find substitutes, they'll switch over to other suppliers, and your product will suffer. Okay. So for example, switching from one product to another doesn't cost them anything, and so therefore it will cost you much than costing the customers or the buyers. So therefore, it's very easy that they'll switch. If there's only close substitute, then it's difficult to switch from one substitute to another. So it depends on the buyer. Depends on the number of available substitutes. The more the substitutes, the easier for people to switch from one product to another. The less the substitute, it's difficult to switch from one to another. So for example, you can't, if there's only one substitute for coffee to tea, then it doesn't cost them anything unless there is another, or unlike another product is available to switch. Okay, so number of substitutes is very important on your power and your decision making place. The last one is threat of new entrants. Threat of new entrants is very important in the sense that your position is affected by people's ability to enter your market. So you need to look at how easy it is to get a foothold in your industry or market. Is it easier to get into your market? Is it easier to break into your product area? Is it easy to get into your market share, or is it difficult? So for example, if you're an oil company wants to get into a new area of if they want to let a new entrant into the market, into the oil production, it's difficult because there are a lot of research and development costs, there are a lot of controls, and there are only few organizations or only few companies that are oil companies that are keeping a barrier to entry. Therefore, it's very difficult for newer entrants to enter into the market. They are tightly controlled. They are very regulated. This is because of the high cost, because of the high training, because of research and development, because of the close-knit organization, and barriers to entry are very high. Okay, so it's so the threat or the money investment is a lot of technology needed in order to get into the oil production and exploration and so forth. So it's so that will determine your position, and to what extent that is advantageous or disadvantageous to an organization. It depends on its entry and the threat of new entry. So the 5 forces model, Porter's 5 forces model, can be used as a gauging tool, as an environmental, as an analysis to determine your policy, to determine your organizational strategy. Okay, so therefore it's quite important, and you can take this as an example. For example, airlines use this kind of 5 forces model, in the sense that the bargaining power of supplier is high, and the bargaining power of buyers is also high. So they, when the bargaining power of supplier is high, the labor unions are very powerful. They control operations, and they are, very powerful in the sense that they control their operations at network hubs. In the sense of course, the buyers, of course, have a higher power, but they are fragmented, and they're, the low switching costs from most customers. So when the bargaining power of buyer is high, they can switch to other low switching costs for most customers, and so on. Okay, so the rivalry, there are a lot of rivalry in the airline industry. Then you need to look at the bargaining power of channels. You need to look at these people. You need to look at this close substitutes. The airline industry is very prone to competition, and this 5 forces model can be applied to them as well. Okay, now looking at the tools that we use, what conclusions can we draw by using these tools, like the SWOT analysis and pastel analysis, and the Porter's 5 forces model. Okay, and what can we learn? What can we draw conclusions from them? We can also look at the external factor like stakeholders environment, in an organization, internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Now, the internal stakeholders are people who are working inside the organization, like the employees, like the managers, like the owners, like the people who are working inside the organization. They are quite powerful. They are internal stakeholders, and the external stakeholders like suppliers and the society in general, and the government, the shareholders, the customers. They of course affect organization in that sense. So therefore, the stakeholder power in an organization is determines their policy, determines their what you call the strategy, and we need to take that into account also. Okay, and we can determine their power or their effect by making a kind of a framework, or making a kind of a plan. Okay, and use that to assess our strategic options. Like we can use the stakeholder analysis and mapping and determine the key holders, the key stakeholders, define their concerns, define their issues, look at their commitments and assess their resistance, and look at them from our viewpoint, and we can see to what extent are they powerful or less powerful, and we can do that by analyzing and mapping. Okay, we can communicate that kind of strategy. We can move make sure that the communication plan, and we can make sure that we talk to the stakeholders in the sense, and by involving them, by giving them feedback, by looking at their timing, by looking at their communication, and making sure that we talk to them by communicating with them, so we can determine that kind of a policy and into planning. And then we can also look at the engagement and strategic techniques. By using these techniques, we can involve the stakeholders into designing and implementing new strategic options for them and with them, and continually engage them, and continually assess them, and continually communicate with them, validate our communication processes. So we can use the stakeholders management framework in order to assess all this stakeholders mapping and so on and so forth. Okay, to determine our communication and determine our the effectiveness of stakeholders. We can determine that policy. Okay, then lastly, we can use the Mandela's matrix as a measure or as a policy making tool. Okay, Mandela's matrix. This is also looks at the power of stakeholders in terms of their influence, and in terms of their power and interest, in terms of their low power or interest, high power. So for example, you can have this quadrant, whereas we can look at the high power. Some stakeholders have very high power, but they have low interest, and in order to do that, they can we need to meet their needs and keep them satisfied, because they are very high power, but with low interest, i.e. the high power investors. For example, a lot of people who have a small number of investors, but they have very high power, and we want to make sure that they are happy, they are satisfied, by maybe we are giving them a higher return or so on, and keeping them happy. If they withdraw their investment, they will be affected. And then there be some people will be lower power but high interest. For example, we need to take them into consideration as well, but keeping them informed, keeping them into engaged, and but because they have a high interest but low power, i.e. general general power, for example, general management, general users, or many a lot of public has a high interest but low power in. So we must take these into account. We can use Mandela's matrix to determine to what extent who is the most powerful interest, who is the more powerful stakeholders in us, and we can determine their power, and so we can change our policy, and we can determine our marketing policy in terms of their interest or stakeholders' interest. And the last one is we can use the SWOT analysis also to look at the internal, internal position of the organization. We can use this tool as well, whereby we look at things that the company does well, the quality that its products is bringing from its competitors. We look at the internal resources, we look at the assets, we look at to what extent are we using our asset to the best of our ability. We look at what we are good in, what we are strong in, what products do we have good quality, and how are we fared against our competitors. So we can look at our strengths, and also we can look at our weaknesses. Where are we weak? Where are we lacking? How we are using our resources? Where are the resources we are not using to the best of our abilities? Where are we stuck, for example, or where are we weak points? So we can we can change our weaknesses into for example our opportunities, or into our strengths. So we want to determine things that the company lacks. Okay, so we can do a SWOT analysis to determine the internal capabilities of the company. Opportunities are something that are unseen, or the opportunities that we are untapped market, for example, or there are new emerging markets there are existing and we've not seen them, and so these are opportunities, or new products, for example, or new services, or the areas that we have not gone into and we want to go into, or we should be going into, to cover a range of products and range of services. So these are the opportunities, or developing new research and development areas, or new competencies, and so on. So these are the opportunities open to the organization that they can go into, providing they have the resources and they have the strengths. Okay, and the last one is the threats. Is, for example, threats from competitors, threats from your regulatory environment, threats from your weather, for example, threats from other environmental issues, or threats from your competitors, because they may be ahead of your game, ahead of the game. So therefore we need to take that into consideration when we are analyzing our SWOT analysis. We must be able to take that into consideration when we are making our strategic options and strategic objectives, and that's very important. Now, SWOT analysis is you can see how it's being used by a Tesla, for example, organization. Their strengths, they have split up their SWOT analysis into 4 quadrants like this. So, for example, they are good in they are good in producing fully electric luxury car. They have a good proprietary technology. Their chief executive is good with track record. They're, for example, they are popular with a younger age groups who are likely to use social media. That's their strength. And weaknesses is, for example, their customers are still wary of a new innovation. Their infrastructure is not developed for electric cars. Their chief executive, also the chief executive officer or CTO of another company. So that might be a weakness, because they're competing organizations, and then the overlapping of duties and overlapping of responsibilities might have a conflict of interest. So that can be a weakness in that sense. Okay, opportunities are, for example, there are a lot of opportunities for international markets. So this company has a new lower model price which appeals to a wide range of customers. They have advanced in technology in many sense, because they have advanced in using the latest or increased battery life, for example, and innovations are there for them. They are aware of the support of environmentalisms. Threats is competition, of course, from established auto companies. There are lawsuits against them, or delay innovations, and loss of government subsidies will drive up prices. They may feel, they may have some law cases outstanding, or maybe they have been sued in certain areas. So therefore, these are kind of threats that they'll have to come up with, okay, or they'll have to combat. Okay, so these threats are very important things to consider when you're designing a marketing strategy. So you can use this to your own application, to your own area as well, to your own organization, and making sure that these are taken into consideration when you're designing designing your policy, you're designing your strategy, you're designing your marketing strategy. Okay, so we've considered a lot of material today on different types of tools that are useful for making a marketing strategy work, or developing a new marketing strategy, okay, or being able to apply tools for analyzing the business environment in strategic marketing. This is what we set out to conquer, or this is we set out to do in the first instance. So today we covered a lot of material on the tools that we can use for strategic marketing, and we so let's reiterate and summarize. We use the SMART objectives for the organization. We looked at the SMART objectives, where we are now, where do we want to go or head, and how do we get there in the first instance. Okay, we use SMART analysis, we use SMART objectives, we use the strategic directions, we used ANSOS matrix, we used we looked at the forces model, we looked at the 5 forces Porter's model, we looked at the internal and external environment, i.e. PEST or PESTEL, and SWOT analysis, and how we can utilize those into our organization, and we won from there. Thank you very much for participating, and we will see you in your next class, LO3. If you have any questions, drop me a line, and I'll try to answer them as fit as I can. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.